My name is Geoffrey, and you're listening to This Day in AI.
Before we start today's show, just a quick reminder, the latest version of Simtheory is now available with an MCP store, async work via tabs, context forking, agentic workflows, and has all the models and tools we use on the show. Use coupon still relevant to get $10 off an AI workspace. And if you have a team or organization that wants a fully customizable workspace with privacy and security in mind, you can now try one out for the first time with your whole team for 7 days to see what you think. Visit simtheory.ai and get your AI workspace set up today. So Chris, this week I've been using the new Ideogram Character Reference to put you in really compromising photos and videos. More on that later. But first, I wanted to discuss, are we still using GPT-5? Is it now your daily driver? And just check in after the sort of fallout of the GPT-5 launch.
Well, I forget what I said last week. I think I was pretty positive about it, despite the community not liking it so much. But to be honest, yeah, I haven't really been using it that much. It fell off a cliff rapidly for me early in the week.
Can you explain why it fell off? Like what?
I think just once you get into the meat and potatoes of regular work, you just go with the models that give you the best results. And I actually have found myself using Claude Sonnet 4 a lot more this week, partly because it got faster because we got more allocation from Amazon to use it. So that was nothing to do with the model improving.
Nothing to do with you trash talking them on the last like 3 shows.
Yeah, you know, I never know, like, is it a coincidence or whatever? But like, I guess a bit of tough love does work from time to time. But yeah, and so I just GPT-5 in general, I just don't go to it basically.
So the thing I've found about working with it is I've surprised myself a little bit. I'm using it a lot, like so much more than I thought I would, but in weird and strange ways. I think I agree with you in terms of like daily driving with MCPs. I'm definitely still favoriting Sonnet because I think, as you said, it performs the best. It's now way faster for us, at least. And it's just capability to go off and call many tools I really like. And I think it's just maybe because of the spin up or the demand for GPT-5 right now, what we're seeing is this problem around, you know, it's just slow to respond through the API because they're under such high load being a newer model. And so if I'm working with MCPs and I want to go back and forth, right now Sonnet is definitely my preferred option. But one observation I have about GPT-5, and this is previously where I would switch to O3 Pro, is it's very smart. Like if you're stuck on a hard problem, it still is my go-to model. And I would say this week's been my go-to model now more than ever before.
That's interesting. Yeah, when you have an actual deep problem you need to solve. I think that's the thing. There's like sort of daily grind of getting tasks done where most of the models can do it competently. And it's only once you get really stuck on something, you really need a much better model. And that's when you start to build an affinity for a model, when it can get you out of those tight situations.
And this is the surprising thing for me this week. I thought, I don't know, from all the hype and the expectation and Sam Altman putting up like I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, but like the Death Star or whatever, like hyping this thing up, like, you know, it's going to take over everything. Like everyone, the expectations for GPT-5 were through the roof. Like they had hyped this thing to no end. We had all been expecting it since GPT-4. And so I feel like they were just never going to deliver or meet the hype. But I did get this like feeling in my belly when it first came out. I'm like, maybe this will be the one model to rule them all. But as you say, there's sort of these grunt models like Gemini 2.5 Pro that's got the huge context window, and it's just good at churning stuff out for you throughout the day. And then you've got Sonnet that's working really well agentically with MCPs. And then GPT-5, for me at least, is my go-to, like, I'm stuck, I need some help, or I need a plan to get unstuck. And that's sort of how I've been using it.
Also, I think to some degree, it's what you always say, which is the model improvement is plateauing to the point where we're not exactly making empirical comparisons between the models. It might just be you happen to give the problems that are easier to one model and therefore you're like, it's amazing, and then you give a harder one to a different model and say it's crap. So I think that partly you're getting relatively equal results from a lot of the models, and therefore you're just going with whichever one's faster or more context window or just works for you on the day.
And so a lot of the feedback around ChatGPT, at least prior to GPT-5, was this whole idea of the model switcher, where you sort of had, and we've lolled at it on the show many times, like O4 Mini, O4 Pro, GPT 4.0, GPT 4.1, GPT 4.5. I mean, this was actually real a while back, and I think it's somewhat laughable because they sit in the consumer market, obviously, and so you know, like everyone's sort of been saying for a long time with the user experience, like, we can't have these models in the picker, like it's just too much. But then they took them away. They sort of did the feedback, which is say like GPT-5 is going to be a router. It's just going to figure out where to route it, and it'll give you the best answer. And they said the router wasn't initially working very well at launch, and people got frustrated. And then all of a sudden, they started rapidly backtracking to the point of like, oh, you know, you can re-enable all the old models. You can re-enable the model switcher, and you can just have it the way things work.
That's right, because at the announcement, they just immediately took away all the 4 series models, right, from the UI. And then I think they said the API is going to lose them fairly soon too.
Yeah, and they also did that like eulogy for GPT 4.0, which really upset a lot of people, especially there was like TikToks and various videos being made about people being upset that like it wasn't the same. Like it wasn't basically chatting to them as much, or like, you know, acting like it was previously. And I've never watched the movie, but I'm pretty sure that's the plot to Her, where they take the AI away, right? Like,
I haven't either, but remember many episodes ago, I talked about how you sort of build up a rapport with your assistant, and that is to some degree tied to the model. So if you take it away, eventually you're going to lose them and lose that connection you developed throughout the working week.
but so just for the lols. So in simplifying around GPT-5, we've gone from having just GPT-5 to now we have GPT-5 Auto decides how long to think. We have fast, instant answers. Thinking-MINI thinks quickly. Thinking thinks longer for better answers. And Pro, research-grade intelligence. Then, under legacy models, we have GPT-4.0, GPT 4.1, GPT 4.5, 03, 04 Mini. Now, I would like to make a huge statement here, a big statement, which is I think that AI companies, us and everyone else in the tech industry, is really underestimating the average punter with AI. I think the reaction to taking away a lot of these models is because power users of AI, which is almost everyone today, and people that start to get a feel for different tunes of models, do start to realize what model is better at what, and they do switch around a fair bit out of pure interest. And so we assume as sort of like a UX design world that, oh, you know, this is way too complicated for plebs. But it turns out, you know, and I think you said this last week, like most people are a lot more sophisticated than people think with AI. Like they're quick to adopt it because it's so powerful. And maybe the human right now, with the way the models are, is the best at picking the model, just like you would pick a software application to do a specific task. You just now pick a model to do a specific task.
I think that's right. I think for the same reason we said that people who are experts in their industry know when the model's giving good answers because they're an expert in that subject, and so they can evaluate its ability to do those tasks. For that same reason, they're going to be able to evaluate the different models' ability to do those tasks well. So it isn't a case where you need to be technical or need to be a programmer to know that an answer to a problem is better or not. I actually think the huge difference between people in terms of their understanding of modern AI is, have they branched away from ChatGPT at all? Because I think anyone who has even slightly, like they've tried Claude or they've tried something else at all, other than the OpenAI model, suddenly realizes that there are alternatives and then they want them all. And I think that's the major distinction. And the second point you made, I strongly agree with, which I think the actual curve between very small amounts of knowledge of the use of the current AI models and being at the most advanced level where you're pushing the boundaries of it is very tiny. Like people go from that initial use of it to I'm using it for everything all the time in my job, and therefore I get good at it really quickly because I'm using it all the time. I don't think it's one of these things like, oh, the internet, I don't deal with all that tech garbage where it takes a long time, like 10, 20 years for all commerce to be done online. This is a much faster uptake.
Yeah, and I also think that people really underestimate the benefits of exploiting all of these tools to get the best result. Like, you would often think, like, if you look at an application like Cursor, there's a reason they offer all of the models, right? Because for different programming tasks or different opinions or different workflows, people like to flip around models. But I don't think that is necessarily that different to knowledge work either, where at the moment you might be writing something and you want to get like 4 different tunes of an answer from 4 of the best models to pick which is the best answer. Because I don't know, I think if you're in a sort of work, like especially like an enterprise or like a business environment where the cost of running inference like 4 times, you don't really care. You just want the best outcome. You just want the best marketing copy, or you just want the best strategy, or whatever it is.
Well, think about doing things like tender applications. If you're applying for a tender, you've really got one shot at it to get it right and win. And if the AI, like if it costs you $200 in influence to get the absolutely best tender application you can get through, of course you'll pay it. It's not a problem. You just want to know which one is best.
But that's why I sort of am starting to see, like I see MCPs and even models in this current paradigm and iteration of LLMs as just like sort of apps. Like, the app is the model where you're like, oh, I'm going to use this particular model for this task because that's just, I get the best result from that model, and I'm going to then pair this model with these like 4 MCPs because that's my workflow for this task right now. And if a better model comes out, I'm going to slot that model in. And I think the GPT-5 router is somewhat like trying to do that human tune or taste test for the user. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure if that's actually benefiting anyone, because the first reaction from people that use ChatGPT, at least in their workday, was like, I want to know what model it's using. Like, if I'm doing some research, I want it to use the best thing, or I want it to use the best thing all the time. And I think that's why that switcher quickly came back, because it was like, we've got to allow them now to select. Like the feedback was very loud online. Like,
I'd also imagine that if you're doing switching, right? Because we do it to some degree with tool selection. If someone has a lot of tools, you really are relying on the cheaper, smaller models to make that decision as to what's available. And if you think about it, it's like a less intelligent person deciding whether or not they will ask a more intelligent person or not to answer a question. So it's a case where you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. So I'd imagine there'd be scenarios where you think, I don't want to delegate this decision to a stupid model to decide if it's going to bother to call the smarter model, because I just want the smarter model in this case. And I think that's where people are not going to want to be hands off and go, I'll just leave it to the fates and let the model decide. You really want to be the one making that decision.
And like, I'm happy to hang my head in shame here, because I thought, given the sort of mass adoption from consumers with ChatGPT, people ultimately wouldn't care about which model was being used, and they would just dumb it down to the point where it, like, you had no idea. You just went to ChatGPT and there was no model picker at all. But the reaction from users, and I don't think this is like I don't think that these kind of users are like the loudest, and like tech people either. I think it's also been, your average punter, right? Like, it's sort of like, hey, I was using this for this, or like I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think it's relegated to some tech elite thing of giving us our models back. I think it's everyone.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is also just part of the problem with this technology in general. Everyone wants it to be better, but no one thinks, what if it gets worse on the things that it's actually helping me with right now? Because that's happened a few times where a model is at the minimum a lot different. Like we saw when some of the models came out so verbose and they were just outputting so much text and people were used to less and things like that. So it's really an ongoing relearning process every time the new models come out. So I can see a desire to be able to have a snapshot in time of something that's fully working for you and stick with it. But you've got the other side of the coin where the providers really don't want to be publicly hosting models forever when they've got the newer and greater thing they want to use their limited supply of GPUs for.
What fascinated me is that just the love for GPT-4o from people that was sort of relying on it as a daily tune, like their daily assistant. You know, the reaction that was just abruptly taken away, which in hindsight is not that surprising, but like at the time I didn't think it'd be such a big deal. But it does show that the tuning that goes into each model too, people get used to a certain tune. And by tune, I mean like how long the response is, you know, if it entertains like, you know, personality, like all the various traits of the model, how it outputs code, how it writes. So people do get used to these things, and then to abruptly just slam it away. Yeah, I do think it's opened my eyes at least to the fact how connected and attached people have become to these various models. Now, to just put this launch in context and kind of recap. So Sam Altman, the day after GPT-5 came out, did an AMA on Reddit, because that's what people still do, I guess, in 2025. And he talked about the launch problems and technical difficulties. They were blaming the fact that the model seemed dumber on the auto switcher. And they said it was down for a big chunk of the day, which made GPT-5 seem way dumber.
That sounds like total bullshit.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe. It says the massive scale rollout caused API traffic to double in 24 hours and created hiccups for hundreds of millions of users. I believe that. I think it probably got smashed.
Yeah.
Bugs in the model router not properly detecting coding queries to the thinking model, which caused GPT-5 to seem like a downgrade for programming tasks. Not
because
sure.
it probably was. It was probably routing everything to a lesser model.
Yeah. The live stream presentation had human error with misleading bar charts due to people working late and being tired.
Oh, so they admitted that one where you pointed out the wrong numbers on there.
Yeah, but get this, like, they are up there saying that GPT-5 hallucinates less. Yet, we were tired and it was human error.
But,
why the charts
yeah,
are
why
wrong?
are the humans making the charts? Don't you trust your tech?
It's not a great look. Anyway, the model switcher currently decides based on domain and complexity, but doesn't search the web first because that would increase latency too much. I mean, that's pretty obvious to me. User access and model options. OpenAI heard loud feedback about bringing back GPT-4o and will restore access for Plus users while monitoring usage to determine long-term support. So you need to pay now to get access to your buddy. They're working on GPT-5-MINI to restore the same overall reasoning usage limits that users previously had with O3, O4 Mini High, and O4 Mini. I mean, this is out of control. Plus users are supposed to have unlimited access to GPT-5, and anyone getting rate limited is experiencing what they consider a bug. They're exploring whether users need access to both 4.0 and 4.1, or if just 4.0 would be sufficient. Like, this is a mess. And I think they're dealing with strange problems that no one's really dealt with before as well here.
It also seems like a hands-off CEO who's like come into the boardroom and they're like, these guys, let's just take away the 4 models without really being close to the actual usage and understanding what's really going on. Like, you know, it's a higher level decision that's been made, and then they've panicked and realized they've upset everyone from the outside in, and then he's sort of deflected the blame onto like the errors of his team and the model not accurately picking and all this sort of stuff. It just seems like they've made actual decisions, haven't liked the consequences, and then said, oh, it's just a rollout issue.
Yeah, I don't understand. To me, they just would have been better coming out and taking full responsibility and saying, like, we completely misread this situation. You know, here's what we're going to do about it, which is kind of what they've done, but it does seem like they really
like,
are making
totally
a lot of
understandable. It's a rapidly evolving situation where they're big leaders in this area, and sometimes you're just going to get it wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being like, oh, we screwed up bad, we're putting it back.
Yeah,
which is what which is what they did to their credit. It's just that they didn't really want to admit that.
They should have just said soz, like SOZ, classic apology, classic corporate apology, soz. Say this is the one I just wanted to call out, and then I'll stop banging on about this. But safety and filtering improvements, they're actively fixing overflagging issues in biological safety that were incorrectly blocking legitimate academic research. Now, our community is experiencing this constantly, the content filtering getting triggered by the most ridiculous things. It is mental. Like, it can be the most innocent thing, and it triggers it, and then you get an API error that's like soz.
And all of this, I think, is a great example why larger companies should be looking at their own private hosting of all of these models, which you can do even with OpenAI models through Azure and Anthropic through Amazon and Google, for example. So they can have the data in a region that they want it, like in their own country, for example, and a deployment of the model that isn't going to be like swapped out and switched and changed and suddenly censored. At least you're getting consistent results and your data's private and you're not subject to the whims of Sam Altman and his group of the week. Like, you really need that level of stability, even if, okay, eventually they'll deprecate the models and you'll have to upgrade, but you can do it on your own time schedule, not when these guys decide to do an announcement to trump Google or something like that.
Yeah. I do want to now go into like less of the drama and more of like my sort of lived experience with the model. I have to say, after the week I've had, the world is better for GPT-5, especially the thinking tune. Like that model is smart, and it's made me also realize that Gemini 2.5 Pro is in need of an intelligence upgrade. I know they have that like long thinking or super think out to like ultra plus users willing to pay Google like $500 a month or something ridiculous, which, let's be honest, like no one's going to actually, I just don't think.
Yeah, unless they're
realistic.
like a YouTuber, like, I experimented with the smartest AI on the internet.
Wait, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
Yeah, but we're way less popular and less entertaining.
Yeah, so I think that it needs an upgrade. Like, it started for the first time, Gemini 2.5 Pro over GPT-5 thinking seems dumb. Especially,
I actually said it to you this morning, and you did make that point about the relative impressions, because I was like, did Gemini 2.5 get dumber? And you're like, maybe the other models just got better, and so it just doesn't seem as smart by comparison, which seems likely. But I must say, this week I've definitely found myself using Gemini 2. Like, it was the only thing I used, to the point where it was all like I wouldn't even try the others. But now I barely use it because I'm just not happy with the output I'm getting, and I don't know if that's because the others are better or not.
Yeah, I think it shines when you've got a hard problem, but I think it's like a grunt worker. Gemini is still better. It's just like big chunky outputs with less hallucinations, even though GPT-5 is meant to do that. GPT-5, I think, suffers from a bit of laziness still that the GPTs have always suffered from, where you ask it for something and then it only spits back. Like, I was getting it to rewrite something the other day for me and produce graphs and just, like, read into some data, GPT-5, and it would just give me like, here is the change in like a single line, which is the right answer, like, to its credit. But I'm like, no, I want you to kind of give me the whole thing again, and show me what it looks like in context. So anyway, it's just a bit lazy, whereas Gemini will just like gung ho and just give you everything you want. And also to
Gemini, you can't stop it from rewriting stuff. Like, you're like, just give me step by step of how to do it. So it's like, sure, Chris, my love, here is the step by step. But then at the end, also I've rewritten the entire 2,000 line file for you as well. Like, it's like, but I don't want you to do that. It's like, but I must. It's my duty.
But you know what I think, in terms of just where this all sits, is this is just going to put enormous pricing pressure on Anthropic, because if I'm Cursor, say, right now, that is burning a lot of tokens and probably losing a lot of money, and GPT-5 comes along and it's smarter and it can work in my prompts and my workflows in order to have the sort of agentic coding capabilities, I'm 100% going to push that model over the Claude model, simply because, you know, you're talking $1.50 to $15. Like, it's a 15x it's 15 times more expensive for Opus over GPT-5. And if I'm in the enterprise too, and I've got this smart model for my coding pipelines and productivity, Claude starts to look really expensive. So I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Anthropic and give OpenAI a chance to sort of, really rug pull that business out from under Anthropic in terms of
that's
code.
right, because if a larger company with, say, 20,000 employees now was coming to you and saying, which model should we make our primary for our team, you're not going to recommend Opus because you're like, you don't want to bankrupt the company. You could never justify the budget. You'd be like, oh, okay, cool. It's only going to cost you about $200 to $300 per month per user across your 20,000 users. And even that's probably not enough. They're going to run into limits and all that sort of stuff. It's just unrealistic. And you're like, but I mean, we can afford it. How much benefit is there? It's like, it's probably like a 2 to 3% benefit sometimes. Like, it's just not that much better to justify the massive increase in price.
Yeah, I guess it'll just come down to, in the coming weeks, if people really do settle on GPT-5. It seems like a lot of people are just straight back to the Claude the Claude models, like just straight up, just back there. And I understand like Opus 4.1 does have a really good tune and it is very intelligent, but I would just say I still think GPT-5 can just absolutely cut through the rubbish. And man, I'm pleased to have access to all of them. And this is not some promotion. I'm just saying, like, I love living in a world where I have access to all these models and I'm not constrained to one, because I think, honestly, if I was stuck in the ChatGPT single model world with GPT-5, I'd be pretty upset. Like, I need the other models. Like,
yeah, you wouldn't even know what you're missing out on if you didn't have access to it.
Yeah.
You'd just be like, I'm ashamed that you've taken away my girlfriend.
So do you think, like, obviously we touched on this before, and to just like round up our average coverage of the GPT-5 launch, like, do you feel a model step change now? And do you think when, say, Gemini 3.0 Pro or whatever we're going to get next out of Google comes, that could be a step up? Or do you get that plateau sense now using them as well? Or do you think we're now too stupid to understand if the models have improved?
I think a big part of the problem is that the waters have been muddied a lot by the rise of MCP and tool calling, because suddenly it becomes a lot more than just which model gives me better answers for my problems. It's like, which combinations of tools do they choose to use? And the problem is that depends on tool availability and the question asked, and they can be quite lengthy processes, so it's a bit harder to get a straight comparison. And then even once they do use the tools, it's like, which ones are best taking into account the tool results to give me an answer and then following up correctly. So I'm finding it a lot harder to evaluate because there's just so many more variables at play when you're using the models. And so for me, a lot of it now is not even which model I use. It's more like, which tool combinations do I have enabled for a given task? Do I directly ask it to use tools, or do I just, trust it to make the right decisions and that kind of thing? So I'm more in that area than I am actually just worrying about which model I'm using at any given time.
Yeah, I think that with the only limitation I've found so far is where other models will get stuck on something and I would normally give up and have to use my own cognition.
Right?
Yeah. That I've been deferring to GPT-5 quite a bit and getting the solution really quickly, or fairly quickly. It's a bit slow. And that, I think I'm noticing an improvement there, like where it's way more intelligent. But I was noticing that similar improvement before and that same workflow before with O3 Pro. I just can't really see myself daily driving GPT-5 due to its tune and how it answers stuff right now. I think I'm still in the Gemini and Sonnet camp there. So anyway, I think we do way too much talking about models and model tunes. Guess it's maybe.
But by the way, just before we finish though, my favorite one is when a tool call fails, like you've asked it to research something, like how I continuously ask it to research diabetes. And if it fails for whatever reason, the model will just be like, hey, look, the tool call failed, but I actually just know the answer to this. Do you just want me to tell you? It's like we're kind of unnecessarily researching this, man.
I'm already smart enough to know that.
Yeah, it's like I was holding back because you said you wanted to do it this way, but look, I just know.
Yeah, like I'm calling the tools to burn through tokens because I've been instructed to.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Sort of like, like a really smart servant or something being made to do menial tasks.
All right, so now to some LOLz, deferring away from model talk. One thing we missed last week was a new release by Ideogram, which is the realistic image generator that people really do love.
Are you sure you're saying that right? It's not ideogram or
Ideogram? No,
Proteogram or something like
Ideogram. I'm sure I've got that one right.
a diagram.
Drop it in the comments below if I'm wrong.
I bet you're wrong though. That's all. I just have an instinct.
Okay, whatever. I'm wrong about everything. Ideogram Character. This is all the way back from July 29th. This is how far behind we were. But we are catching up. So because last week was such an epic week. So this is very cool and very useful. So you can take a photo of yourself, and I'll show you in a minute how low quality the photo can be and how realistic it is with some example images I did for you, Chris. And so you take a photo, any photo, almost any angle works as well, which blows my mind. And then you can be like, make me a boxer or make me a homeless computer programmer or something like that. And you get phenomenal results. It is too much fun. I've wasted way too much time on this. And yeah, it's incredible. I think in terms of like, what's it actually useful for? I think
nothing.
Absolutely nothing. No. So it's pretty useful at like passport photos, LinkedIn profile images, corporate photos. If you don't like, if you don't like the current photo you have, you just ask for something completely different. And it's so realistic that you wouldn't notice the difference. These are some LOLz that I did in a demo video of it. This is me as a male model. Now let me look at I'll show you the photo. So this is the sample photo. So that's all. It's just from that photo. Now there were whole companies like that Photo AI that you would pay like to train your own custom LoRa and all that sort of stuff in the past.
Yeah, that's right.
But now this is just like you drag and drop a photo in and like boom. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Let me now show you some examples I made of you very quickly.
Oh, this will be good.
But you always send me the lowest quality photos for our YouTube thumbnails, which is always why, like, sometimes you look like your camera's so bad, even though I bought you a new one.
Yeah, like every time you see me in real life, you're like, oh, you don't look sick.
Yeah, I'm like, you look so healthy. And then I realize it's just, bad setup. So here's a really low res blurry photo of you, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's you at an internet cafe in the 90s looking a bit hobo-ish.
In a denim jacket.
Well, and it's got tape on it and stuff because I said, use Ideogram Character to make me look like a homeless person working at a laptop in an internet cafe from the 90s.
That's pretty good. Very creative. Well done.
All of our listeners will love this segment.
This next one is truly disturbing. Look away if you're easily disturbed.
So I said, okay, do another one. But this time I've fallen on the floor and there was whiskey bottles around me. It didn't really nail the whiskey bottles, but
I've fallen.
And you also now have a crop top on and your belly is exposed. But it looks like you. Hey, we're talking about character consistency here. That's unbelievable. True. Like, I mean, look at the photo I supplied.
Yeah, you're right. Like, I think if I showed that to someone I knew, they would think it's me. I think they'd know it's AI, but they wouldn't think it's me.
So then the next one is now make an image of me in a girl pop group on stage performing.
I haven't seen this one yet.
This is truly disturbing. So let me zoom in here.
Oh, I gotta see this. Oh, yes. Oh, God.
I mean, because the head of the person next to you is fully on backwards, that's the giveaway.
It's like my wife was saying the other day, kids can tell pictures are AI, but it's usually because, the people are deformed or the fingers aren't right or something like that.
Here's you as like an emo in the MySpace era. It's okay. And then I did a few more. Here's me as a model in Italy. Notice how my positive. Yeah, I'm doing you as homeless. I'm doing me as a male model.
It's fine. It's realistic.
So, and then this one, I'm like, put a girl in the photo. Now I have a tattoo on my chest, apparently.
Oh, so that isn't meant to be your wife. That's just some rando.
Yeah, it does
Oh,
look
right.
like her though, which is kind of
Yeah.
strange. And then I said, now make me a firefighter. So I'm just like changing it up in the chat. I'm like, now make me a firefighter. And then bam, I'm putting out a fire in Australia. And yeah, and then I did as Batman. I mean, like, you gotta come on, like, this is good, right?
Well, and I don't know if you were going to mention it, but you were also turning a lot of these into videos, right, with VO3?
Yeah, so that's the other thing. So in an update where we've pushed out a whole bunch of new creative MCPs, I added in VO3 Kling WAN 2.2, which is a new open source model from the Alibaba group. And you can now just say, once you get an image, like a character reference, you can say basically like, now bring it to life, or, you know, have them like fly off into the distance and just instruct it. And I think that bringing these tools together has a lot of interesting possibilities, right? Like this idea of now you've got character reference, you can create the images or the scenes, you can turn them into actually video scenes, you can create music with this Suno MCP, then you can create audio eventually with like 11 labs. So you could kind of see your assistant eventually being able to connect this stuff together, edit it all together, and create like a little TV show or a movie or a musical or whatever, like where everything works together. And I think it's really that combining these MCPs together and leaning on these technologies is probably the next paradigm of where you start bringing this all together.
Yeah, and I think part of the entertainment of doing it is when you use other tools like research tools or internal company tools or your emails or something like that, and you're like, go check my latest emails, turn that into an image, then turn that into a video and make a song about it. And you can genuinely do that. And it's just the most bizarre things. Like, it looks so real, but it just and it has a basis in reality. But who would ever do that? Who would ever go to the trouble of making a video and a song about these mundane things? And that's what I find genuinely entertaining about it.
Yeah, the other really interesting thing about this is the like creating images or lookalike like images from MCP and then tying it into other skills as well. So another one of the interesting MCPs is this it's called Tripo 3D. And what it allows you to do is sort of combine all these things together. So in the example I've got up on the screen now, I combined an ideogram. Oh, sorry. So the prompt was use ideogram flux, WAN, and GPT image. Man, this is burning the GPUs.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring up, Mike. How much did you spend on this stuff this week?
I'll reveal that in a minute. It's not good. Use ideogram flux, WAN, and GPT image to create a concept of a futuristic cyber car. It should be golden and fit at least 4 people. My prompts are weird. Anyway, so it goes off. It goes. This is with Sonnet. It hits ideogram flux, WAN, and GPT image at the same time. Gives me 4 concept cars, and then I say, okay, take the GPT one, which is the one I like the most, and remove the background using Bria. So Bria is this other really great model that just nails removing background images, and I know that sounds.
I think that actually wiped out a couple of startups. I remember seeing on LinkedIn a while ago, there was a startup that was just for removing backgrounds for product images.
Well, that could be the startup, but it's really good. It also does product placements. So you can like take a picture of a product if you run an e-commerce business and say to this Bria app, like put it in like a nice, you know, forest or jungle. Like if you know, like the example they give is a candle and it's like in some rainforest sitting there, and I don't know.
Isn't that that's dangerous? That's irresponsible of that model.
No, I think women love that. Like when your candle's in the forest, you know, all those marketing shots.
I guess if it's a rainforest, it's wet, so it's not going to ignite.
But anyway, so then you've got like, look at that. So it's taken, let me bring up the original. So it's taken this image here,
Yeah.
and then it's removed the background.
Move the background.
And I can
then
kind
wait.
of demonstrate that, like how good it is. Boom, it's gone. And then I asked it, and this is using that Tripo 3D. Now turn this into a 3D object. And this is where I reckon it gets really cool.
It's pretty amazing because these assets seem like they could be immediately used in like video games or like visualize. Like think about someone who does like interior design. I mean, they could more or less be fabricating furniture and stuff to rotate and put inside a virtual house to demonstrate to people. Like if you're like a kitchen designer or a whatever, you could actually go, oh, well, let's look what the Bosch dishwasher 3.0 looks like in your new kitchen and actually put it in there.
Yeah, and look at this one. So I actually stole this idea from your fish shoe, which you should release. But
I should have sent you a link. My shoe was much better than this. Mine looked like an actual like colorful trout or something as a shoe, and I'm going to patent it. It's really good.
But yeah, see, like as a concept or just coming up with new creative concepts and visualizing them and then throw this, because it's a file that you can...
You think Nike or someone would release a product like this, right? Like where you can just develop a concept shoe and then print it out in a factory in China or something.
Yeah, like design your own shoe.
Yeah.
And then, so anyway, what is then cool is you can... so you can, with this 3D model, you can then go and like 3D print these parts or concepts. So like you can now go from creating an image with AI to turning that image into a 3D object to then printing that in a 3D printer and creating something from scratch. I mean, it's pretty amazing how just that democratization of creativity or like making stuff, like this is almost like the Star Trek replicator, right? Like you can now imagine something, ask the computer to create that thing, create a file, and then potentially 3D print it.
I was thinking, imagine if like how you had like your fitness tracker in there. Imagine if you had one that monitors all your health and vital signs and mineral levels and stuff. And then it has a 3D printer that can output like supplements. And so it's like, here is the ultimate pill for you to like supplement your body on all the crap you're missing.
Yeah, we might get to the replicator. I took this concept here as well and made a 3D spaceship with it. Like, anyway, I had way too much fun with this and spent a lot of time mucking around with it. So let me now reveal the bill.
Well, the bill didn't come from these ones, right? It's all VO3 that's the real cost.
Yeah, so I actually just did. I don't know what this is going to be, so this could be highly embarrassing. But here's the Batman video, and me as Batman.
Very cool.
Was it worth $6 or whatever that just cost me? I'm not sure.
I think so.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean,
but it's clearly showing the sort of continuity of the data between the different tools is what's really exciting. That you can ask one specialist tool to do one thing and then bring it to another specialist tool and do something with it. And I imagine there's a lot of industries where you're working with relatively old technology that needs certain inputs that can then be generated by more advanced modern AI outputs to really make things that couldn't be made more efficient, much more efficient. And so when those outputs become API calls into another system or become some sort of actuator in the real world, there's a lot of potential with this combination of all the different tools. And I think that's why we're seeing just this explosion in MCPs and the combinations of them, because it's so useful. And the models themselves, and this applies to basically all of them, are really good at that, taking stuff from one tool and putting it into another one.
Do you think that, see, to me, and we were saying this before the show about MCPs, because now we've released them, a lot of people are trying to make their own and discovering, like we did, just how hard it is to make them and deploy them to people. Like, it's not easy. The protocol, like there's been so many iterations now of how you serve them that I've lost track. And then authentication's a bit of a mess around them. They proved during the week at some InfoSec type conference that they could exploit some of them in certain ways as well. And so, there's a lot of negativity around it as a standard, but then also it's hard to see it not being a factor, like it not being a thing in the future right now, especially how the models are.
Yeah, what I said to you before the show was, remember when GPTs came out and we're like, oh, okay, this is the future. They'll have a store on OpenAI. People will make entire businesses out of building custom agents for people or custom assistants or whatever they are for people. People will license those, pay them money, and then use it for their jobs. But it sort of went to nothing because we all realized they were really just prompt engineers, like just making good prompts. And then people were like, well, I can kind of just do that myself and I don't need all this stuff. I think it's different this time. I think the concept of groups of tools that work with your models for the reasons we just said are incredibly powerful. And I think that ultimately we're going to see a new generation of MCPs, which are almost certainly being worked on right now, that are far better than the current ones. The current ones are very immature, and most of them have just been made by enthusiastic people who just want stuff. Like they're like, I really want to be able to access my emails, or I really want to be able to access my Cloudflare data or whatever it is. So they've just bashed one out. And when you look at the code for all of these things, it's like 4 months ago, 6 months ago, like last updated. And they're just these static things that just are a nice idea, but not fully fledged. And I think the weaknesses in them now are far too many tools. So they've just thrown everything at a wall and are relying on the model to make good decisions. The models themselves don't have good instructions about when to use each of the tools, and when they do, how to use it. And moreover, when they do use a particular tool, the most appropriate output type. Like, for example, some tools are really just part of a chain. It's like you've really just got to manufacture your output, do your thing, dump the output, and you're done. But other ones really have a logical follow-on. So if, for example, in your image ones, it's like, well, you don't just have to make the image. You need to output the image. You need to find a way to get it into the user's hands. And so I think what we'll see with the MCPs is them getting more sophisticated and mature. And then I think the other major thing is going to be official providers of MCP. So not just some dude on GitHub, but like the companies themselves or forward-thinking companies themselves saying, here is a paid, metered MCP. You plug it in with the URL. It's got discoverable OAuth in it. So the auth is just sorted as long as you support that. And this is the official one that works the best with our product. And then I think once we hit that, it's going to get incredibly powerful. And I think that's when we're going to see, like we discussed, the depressing world of MCP optimization, where your image background removing tool is competing with 5 others. So the AI picks yours over theirs and that kind of thing. I think probably neither. I think it's really about the client. Like in our case, it's Simtheory, but in some people's cases, it's like Claude Desktop and OpenAI or whatever the case may be. But that's the point, right? So the tools will produce output, but the thing about it is, again, because the MCPs aren't that sophisticated, the output they produce often isn't appropriate to be fed back into a model. So, for example, say you're crawling web pages. Web pages are full of junk. There's so much crap on there. And if you just get the raw output of a web page and go, that's my tool result, and then shove that back into the model's going to fall over because it's way too much data. It uses too many tokens. It dilutes the meaning of what you're trying to do. And often it just exceeds the limits of the model. So the client in the middle needs to go, okay, which part of these results are actually relevant to the answer? Then you've got the case like you just said with Interpreter. So Interpreter comes back and says, okay, I've gone off and produced this chart or this Excel document or this PowerPoint or this C file or whatever it is. Here's the file. So what do you do then? Do you just give the raw file back to the model and then expect the model to re-output it in whichever way it normally does? Or do you, as the client, intercept that file, provide it to the model, but also output it to the user? So there's a lot of, like, you're right, it's a whole other step in this process that has largely been ignored because it's not really the responsibility of the model providers. It's a responsibility of the system that is actually running the tools, and therefore it needs to decide. And I agree with you. I think there's significant scope to improve in that area in 2 ways. One is, how is it presented to the user in a way that's ultra convenient? So in our case, for example, when we get a music file, we will show a visualizer, show the lyrics if it's a song. If it's an image, generating a detailed description of that image and allowing you to zoom in and download different versions or reuse it in future tool calls and stuff like that. If it's a file like a document, being able to actually then edit the document or sync it over to Google Docs or the Microsoft, whatever their drive thing's called. And so I think that there's a big scope there. But then the second part is, how do you then turn those tool results into something you feed back into the model? So then as your session with the model continues, it understands what has gone on. It understands what you've done to the file, what access the user has to it, and which pieces of that file are relevant to its subsequent operations in the thing. Because the last thing you want to do is get some massive result from a tool call and then include it in every subsequent request as if it's just as important as everything else, when you may have only needed small amounts of information from it. And I think this is where we see in longer sessions with tool calls, the quality degrading and people running into errors and other unexpected things that seems like they used to work, but now they don't. And I think that's part of the problem, is we need this level of curation there around the way tool call output is handled.
So for that last part there, I had my microphone on mute, so we cut it up so Chris just kept speaking. I do apologize for that. One point I did make in the interlude there was what I think is needed from the next models, including like a Gemini 3 tune. And we were talking about, that you as the listener didn't hear, is this idea that the models that don't support MCPs well seem lesser now. And that the improvements in, in the latest Claude Sonnet or Claude Opus with tool calling really do make them still stand out. And how, what I really want to see from Gemini 3 is the tool calling, the async tool calling, the inline thinking, the internal clock speed of that model. And I think these are the most important things that the labs can focus on right now, because if intelligence is not necessarily plateauing, but at least our perception of the models is somewhat plateauing and they're getting like some incremental gains where they feel a little bit smarter, like GPT-5, that's probably the thing to focus on, next. Like that's where we need a lot of improvements.
Yeah. And I think some of the tooling around that stuff will help as well. Like to some degree, allowing the people using the tools at a tech level to just dump stuff in there and having the library or the model actually be able to cope with things and clean it up itself. That's probably going to help a lot too in the perceived quality of the models.
And that's where GPT-5 kind of disappoints me. It just feels like the MCP integration was rushed or not. It's not like deeply trained into that model, because GPT-5 is really a collection of existing models that already struggled with MCP. And so that's where it feels off. Like you can tell it was geared towards deep research by doing all the tool calling up front, and then it doesn't really call tools later in its sort of like internal clock. And to me, that's why it still feels off. It's sort of like the design of the Boeing 737, how it's never changed since it was first came to be. And like they've had to like flatten the cowlings on the engines to fit bigger, more fuel efficient engines under it, because it sits so low to the ground. And I think I don't know, this is a weird metaphor, but the GPTs now feel like the Boeing 737. Like it's reliable, it's good, unless, it's the MAX. But it really needs like a new sort of foundation, and for the MCP world, it feels like it needs a new foundation.
It's understandable for the reasons I said earlier, which is I don't think anyone, like tool calling was around for ages before the MCP concept came in. And I think some people use tool calling for whatever systems they were making because it was convenient. But a lot of people like us sort of implemented our own tool calling, where you'd get the AI to output certain tokens and then do things based on those tokens. And then when the MCP concept came out, you're like, oh, actually, this stuff works really well. And then everyone realized how you could combine these things to get really good results. And so I think not everyone would have assumed that would have taken off to the degree it has, and therefore takes a while to make these models. They probably just weren't ready for it, and the next iteration will see that.
So final thing, I have promised for quite a while I would work on a Sundar pendant. This is my current 3D design that I'm modeling out with the AI. So this is the Sundar Pendant. I don't know if it'll look like this, but I am actually going to 3D print a concept because I want to try this out. And I'm hoping that Gemini 3 really delivers when it comes out soon, so that
this will be immensely popular.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll cost. This will be a huge loss in terms of manufacturing. Maybe if Google could give me some of my VO3 back, I could afford to actually.
You can either make one
pendant.
video on VO3 or have this pendant.
Yeah. Okay. Wrapping up, because we are both chronically tired, if it hasn't shown from this, if you've made it this far, you can probably tell we have had very little sleep this week and are operating on fumes.
Too busy making seductive photos of me as a homeless computer programmer in a 1995 cafe.
Yeah, or designing new shirts and trying them on fake models that I've created as well here. Make AI great again. All right, so yeah, any final thoughts? GPT-5, it doesn't seem like you're a fan. You seem more of a fan on launch day than now, a week later.
To be honest, I think for the reasons you just said, I've just been continuously testing MCP-based stuff, and I just use whatever's the fastest and calls the tools the best. And right now, that's not GPT-5. It's too slow, and it doesn't call the tools the best. So I think that that's part of the problem for me. I think if I was doing a different kind of work, where I needed, say, better decision making or something like that, I might have given it a better chance. So I think my opinion's probably a little bit biased against it for no fault of its own.
All right, so one more thing before we go. Final LOLz of the week. So
Sure.
Alexander Wang, who was at the Scale AI company that Zuck bought for a couple of billy, just for him basically, because he's like a cool tech bro. They have been poaching OpenAI researchers from the gaggle. You know, when they announce something, the gaggle gets marched out.
It's like a shopping catalog. I'll take that one.
So he's basically like shopping now on the OpenAI live streams, going, oh, that guy seems like he's a good contributor to this gaggle. And then it sounds like they're just making them offers. And but it's pretty savage, this post on X. Someone said, the person who was poached said, after a great time at OpenAI, we recently joined Meta Superintelligence Labs. So this gaggle actually came as a 3-for-1 package. Like, you get one of them, the whole gaggle goes.
Yeah.
And then Alexander Wang posted, welcome to the team. Some may recognize them from various recent live streams. Smiley face. Like, absolutely savage. So
Wow.
this is the point it's gotten to where OpenAI team members are now being poached. And
it seems like a pretty small industry to burn your bridges like that. You know, like if you get fired from there, then what?
Do you reckon they even care? They're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, none of these people would care. Like,
Yeah, okay.
burn any bridge you want. It doesn't matter. All right, that is it for this week. We will see you next week. If you want to play around with some of the 3D stuff and print your own pendant, you can check that out on Simtheory now. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Sam said, here's the future, it's finally here. But the router's broken and the users shed a tear. Promised PhD level thinking, got a corporate drone, now everyone's crying, wishing they left GPT-4 alone. 15 seconds loading just to get a bland reply, while the hype machine keeps spinning another lie. GPT-5, you're supposed to be so smart, but you ripped our workflows apart. Writers busted, responses are flat. OpenAI, what the hell was that? GPT-5, the upgrade that went wrong. Now we're singing this sad indie song. They took away our GPT this is not the end. But the new model's got no soul to find, just a beige zombie with a corporate mind. Benchmarks like the users cry, another launch where promises die. GPT-5, you're supposed to be so smart, but you ripped our workflows apart. Routers busted, responses are flat. OpenAI, what the hell was that? GPT-5, the upgrade that went wrong. Now we're singing this sad indie song. We're working on fixes, Sam tweets in the night while subscribers cancel and put up a fight. The router's confused, doesn't know what to do, sends complex queries to models that haven't got a clue. GPT-5, you broke our hearts, tore our favorite AI apart. Promise us the moon and stars, deliver us these battle scars. GPT-5, the hype that fell so hard, left us singing in our backyard. Maybe next time test before you ship. Save us all from this sinking ship.